Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the CSO Zone. I'm delighted to introduce our next speakers from UNICEF. We have Tom Burstow and Leisha Braithwaite. So Tom, over to you to take it away. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. My name's Tom Burstow. I work here in the UK, focused on work in sport. So I work across all of our different aspects of sport in the UK and how we use those to benefit children right around the world. I'm here with my colleague Leisha Braithwaite, who manages our connection specifically in football. So our partnerships with Manchester United, with the England football team, and with Rangers up in Scotland. We're delighted to be here at Soccerex, and we're particularly happy that this CSO zone exists, really to demonstrate the power that football can have in creating change for people, and specifically in our case for children throughout the world. We've been working in football now for more than 15 years with a variety of partners right around the world in different contexts, doing different things with those partners, and have really seen the power of football, both in terms of raising funds and awareness for children, but also creating direct change in their lives. So we're really happy to be here to share some of that experience with you. However, the specific focus of our session today is really around the commercial value that we believe that a charity partnership or a relationship like the ones that people have with UNICEF can bring to clubs, to individuals, to leagues. And we wanted to share some of the experience of those relationships and just how we've been able to leverage those partnerships, not only for the good of children, but also for the benefit of our commercial partners. So we're going to run through a few slides with you just to talk to that just a little bit. First of all, just a little bit about who we are as UNICEF. Most of you will know us, not least from the front of the Barcelona shirts, or the back as it is these days, but we've been around for around 70 years now. We work in 190 countries around the world, and we are the world's leading organisation for children. So we operate through those countries to deliver the rights for children, whatever their condition may be, wherever they may be based. And we do that by raising money and awareness in countries like the UK and across Europe, but delivering programs on the ground in countries across Africa, across Asia, and other parts of the world. Our governance is really there to ensure that we operate to ensure that children's rights are met, whatever their situation, that all the rights that children need to grow up healthy and strong are met. So we work in a number of different areas, from children's birth right through to adulthood. And we cover the 7 areas outlined on the slide here, just to ensure that every child has the opportunity to thrive in wherever they are and whatever their existence is. Importantly, in the context of football, we have the opportunity or the obligation to fulfill the right to play. That's one of the rights outlined in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. So we're really committed to ensuring that every child has the right to play, no matter where they are and what their situation is. And we not only find that football is a great vehicle for giving that access to people for the first time, but it's also a great way of ensuring that they have access to education, access to health, access to nutrition, to messaging that will ensure that they are able to grow up healthy and strong. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. Leisha's going to share just a little bit about why we're specifically involved in football.
So, as Tom said, we've been working in the sports sector, but notably with football since 1999, when we first started partnering with Manchester United. And over the years, we have gained a number of other high-profile football partners. So Barcelona, as everyone knows, it's the highest profile one with the logo on the shirt. But in more recent years, we've been doing other things with other teams as well. So in the past year, we've signed a partnership with Maccabi Tel Aviv, and we are working with them on addressing the issues of violence in sport in Israel. So we are very used and experienced to developing kind of bespoke partnerships, I guess, that address some of the concerns and considerations of the club and some of their commercial concerns as well, but also delivering change for children, which of course is our first priority. And the partnerships that we develop are long-term, they are mutually beneficial. The development is in line with the club, what issues they are looking to consider, fan engagement issues, for example, what their commercial agendas are. We'll be looking at all of those things to create something that is delivering for both the club and ourselves, because we know that to create something that's really long-term and really drives change for children in a sustainable way, it needs to work for both parties. So as you can see in the slide, we kind of consider our relationships in 4 main pillars. So fundraising is I guess, the obvious one, which is key for us because that's the part that delivers change for children. But we know that sports clubs can deliver so much more than just the income. So we're looking at a much more rounded picture of how the clubs and the players and the platform that they provide can really help us to drive our messaging. So I guess for us, the key priority is around creating change for children. So this is the part through fundraising, but it's much bigger than that. And football nowadays is global. It's, we're no longer thinking about teams in a national perspective. Players are international, fans are international. And, football teams we consider now need to be thinking about much more than just the community around the stadium. So much broader than just the sort of 10 miles around where they're based. Their fans are international, and their fans have got, needs and considerations which the club needs to be addressing and has a responsibility to address. And through UNICEF, we can help them to do that. So we'll be coming on to talk in more detail about the commercial value that we think that UNICEF brings to the brand and the club. So just to top line them here, and then we can dig a bit deeper as we go on. So around the brand association, UNICEF has 87% global recognition. So it's a brand that wherever you are in the world, people have seen, people trust, and people want to be associated with. So there's a very positive association of the club being involved with UNICEF. Beyond that, the nature of our work, so working with children, vulnerable children, and protecting them from danger, presents the human side of the club. So there's a lot of money in sport nowadays. I think people are becoming cynical around that, and UNICEF, in association with the club, can really help to deliver that more human face. We've seen the changing world of CSR and social responsibility, that it's now an expectation of fans. They expect clubs to take a responsibility and to be thinking about their legacy beyond just the performance on the pitch. And then, as I alluded to earlier, around the commercial piece. So within our partnerships, we are looking at how we can help deliver and improve on bottom line. So be that with activations in emerging markets, or looking beyond that around media, communication plans, all of that sort of thing.
So we wanted to spend a little bit of time just digging into some of the areas that we've had experience in over the years, and just how we've had the opportunity to create some positive results in some of the areas that Alicia's just touched upon. Many clubs have a charity partnership already. They have some form of engagement with a charity. I guess for us, we're always looking at how do we create the level of scale that is justified and perhaps expected of these clubs that have multi-million-pound salaries, multi-million-pound sponsor contracts, and global audiences. So really for us, it's about trying to look at each of the areas that a club is involved with and identify what those opportunities could be to create significant revenue streams for our work as UNICEF, but also create significant commercial value for those individual clubs. We're going to touch on each of the areas highlighted on the slides here at the moment. And just to say, I mean, this is really what we've highlighted here is something we would position as the kind of perfect partnership. This is definitely not something that UNICEF has done. We've done these things with different clubs at different times. I think this is an aspiration for us to look at how do we bring these different elements together in partnerships with our clubs, with our different teams that we've worked with leagues, to really leverage the assets that are available to both the club or the league and to UNICEF to create much better value for the club, but also much better value for UNICEF, and therefore much more change for children. So we're going to take each of these in turn. So first of all, just looking at business risks. So this is an area that's increasingly top of mind for us, I suppose. There's a lot of talk about the power of sports, the power of football, the opportunities that creates for positive things to happen. However, at UNICEF, we're also very conscious of the risks that exist in sports and in football specifically. In fact, our relationship with Manchester United began more than 15 years ago around a supply chain risk that they'd identified. So specifically the issue of how their balls and how their kits were being produced in India, and whether there was a child labour component to that they were unsure about. So they investigated that through UNICEF, seeking our technical support in that area. There are a number of those kinds of issues that exist still, perhaps others here on this list here, perhaps around youth player welfare, so the issue of children or young footballers coming from other parts of the world to the UK or Europe, and some of the issues that they face if they make it or don't make it. There's a particular issue around violence in sport, so the opportunity for physical or verbal abuse that children face in some parts of the world when they're playing sport, which UNICEF has created a coalition around, which a number of football teams are now getting involved in with us. And then there's this issue of over-commercialisation. So we all know how strongly football clubs in the UK in particular are chasing those commercial deals. There is a risk of over-commercialising a club whereby sponsors can't be serviced sufficiently, and we at UNICEF believe there's an opportunity for a charity partnership, particularly one of the scale and breadth that UNICEF offers, to add some value in that space given our global presence. So there's a risk area I think we wanted to highlight that a charity partnership can contribute into creating a commercial value in that space. Another area we've worked on for a number of years, again looking at our relationship with Manchester United some years ago, was around emerging markets. So as I mentioned up front, UNICEF has a presence in 190 countries around the world. So the opportunity to connect and add value with stakeholders in those countries where clubs are trying to secure new fan bases, new sponsors, new broadcast deals is huge. And given our network and our relationships and the credibility that we have in those markets, we believe there's a really positive opportunity to do that. We have just one quote there from Malaysia about Manchester United's arrival there, and how the charity work is seen as such an important part of their arrival into that market, the development of that market. And we know anecdotally from clubs just how critically they see the involvement of UNICEF and our credibility and reputation in those places is to their emergence in those countries. But we know it's also really important to the players, and I think this is an increasing trend. And we've just listened to Ennie and Lucy Bronze talking about their experiences as female footballers, and increasingly we understand from the footballers that we work with just how important it is that they feel a sense of pride in their employer, in the club that they work for. And a charity partnership can again play a role in that. So we've got a wonderful quote here for us from Andres Iniesta at Barca that he made recently about his pride about wearing the UNICEF logo on the Barcelona shirt. We know from our time working with Alex Ferguson just how valuable he thought the UNICEF relationship was in grounding some of the young players that he was working with at the time, giving them the opportunity to see some of UNICEF's work as part of pre-season tours that the club would make, just to give them a different sense of the world. These are massively privileged players, multi-millionaires in their own right, many of whom have never seen any of the kind of deprivation that UNICEF works in and day out. So the opportunity to build and develop a sense of consciousness, a sense of other and deprivation amongst those players is really important. Most notably for us, David Beckham was part of that journey with Sir Alex Ferguson, and he's now worked with us for the last 10 years around his activities supporting UNICEF, and that's been a huge relationship that has generated millions of pounds for UNICEF and a massive global message going out to millions of people around the work that we do. So players, again, is a huge area where we believe there's an opportunity to create additional value for clubs.
Beyond players, thinking about sponsors, this is also an area that we are working increasingly in, and we wanted to share with you one example of Western Union. So through their sponsorship of the Europa League, we've been working with them since 2013 on quite an innovative initiative that has given for them, I think, brand cut-through and has really added value to their sponsorship deal. So they were already committed to Europa League, and they have done an initiative with us whereby for every pass during the game, they donate to UNICEF. And this has given them quite a nice message around education, which has given them brand uplift in quite a competitive market. And they've secured significant media coverage off the back of it, both here in the UK, in Europe, and also in African press, which we know is obviously a significant market for them. So in terms of fan engagement, this is obviously a key priority for clubs. If we're looking at many of the top Premiership clubs nowadays, the majority of their fans are overseas, and actually engaging with those fans in emerging markets is a real challenge for them. So we've worked really closely in our relationship with Manchester United in terms of bringing the club presence to these fans in these markets. So Tom mentioned around over-commercialisation, that actually it's very difficult for the club to have the sense of presence in these markets, but through the relationship with UNICEF, with channeling funds into programs in those markets, they can demonstrate to their fans that they are engaged with their communities, they understand the issues that they're facing, and that they're working to help to address them. And we know that that really positively improves their impression of the club and increases loyalty with them.
So putting all these areas together, we believe there's an overall brand value that a global charity partnership, if managed correctly and if access is provided and if assets are used collaboratively, there's an overall brand value that can be added to through a relationship with UNICEF or another organisation of our scale and breadth. We've already mentioned the global awareness that we bring, but we also have other examples from our work in sport elsewhere. For example, the Commonwealth Games last year, where we, in collaboration with the organisers of that, ran an opening ceremony appeal which raised more than £3.5 million just in one evening alone. So we know that with the power and money and influence and assets available to clubs, there is a huge opportunity to do a huge amount, both for the club, for the individuals, but also for children. And we are just in the stage now of trying to understand just how we can measure that, how we can get to the bottom of understanding that brand value uplift. Anyone who has any insights into that would be able to help us on that journey would be much appreciated. We'd love to have a conversation with you. But essentially, we're just really looking to understand just what do these relationships do tangibly for a club? How do we better position charity partnerships, our work for children in that commercial space to ensure that there are that many more positive outcomes for children, for people with disadvantages around the world as a result of football? And our plans specifically around that are to develop a concept we're calling Team UNICEF. So as you will probably know, we have a number of different sporting partners, both in football and beyond football. The All Blacks, Novak Djokovic, Serena Williams, Andy Murray, Lewis Hamilton, Lionel Messi, Barcelona, Manchester United, and to name but a few. There's a huge number of people that we work with in the sports sphere. Our ambition and our developing concept is to bring those together under the concept of Team UNICEF, to try and draw out some of the passion that exists for sport from those people who are on the street, to make a connection between those people on the street that want to do something positive for children but love sport and love their sporting heroes, into the same team, a team that is powered by the change that sport can bring, but also by doing something positive for children. So we're at the start of that journey. We're already hearing from some of our partners just how important it is for them to be seen with other parts of the sporting industry. We talked to the All Blacks. They want to be positioned alongside Manchester United or Andy Murray. They're really interested by the connections that those partnerships can make, and we believe by leveraging some of those connections that we can create, there are great opportunities to bring a new audience to UNICEF's work, a new audience to those sporting partners, and create greater outcomes for children. So that is part of our future. Again, if there are anyone here that's interested in understanding a little bit more about that, or whether your organisation may be keen to get involved in some form, we're looking for high-level, high-profile partnerships that could generate significant funds and awareness and change for children as a result of sport. So that's all we have time for. We wanted to just open the floor up. There's not many of you here, but I hope some of that has sparked just a little bit of interest. We'd love to hear any experiences you have perhaps of working with charities in football, of your experiences of what's gone well and what's not worked in that regard, or any questions for us that you have from what we've shared so far. I think there's a mic around if there are any questions. Hello. Yeah, thank you.
Beg your pardon.
Thanks. I'm Jane from Coaching for Hope, and we've been sort of following the work of UNICEF very closely. And one of the things I'd like to ask, I'm sorry I missed the first part of your presentation, was what you're doing about safeguarding children in sport in terms of child protection and those kind of issues. Because one of the things that we find working in West Africa in particular, getting across the ideas around child protection is sometimes quite challenging because it's culturally seen as in a different way, and I think the way we work with our coaches is very much consultative and participative and listening to their ideas, etc. But also working with them to understand things around capital punishment and corporal punishment. Sorry,
Yes.
don't kill children. So that kind of concept. I don't know what. It'd be really helpful to know what your sort of position on that is.
Absolutely. So I touched briefly on it earlier as one of the risks that we've identified in sport, actually. Whilst there are a huge number of opportunities in sport, there are a huge number of risks for children, and safeguarding is one we've absolutely hit upon as being a major risk for children in many parts of the world. So about 2 years ago, UNICEF began a coalition of around 40 partners involved so far, specifically looking at safeguarding children in sport. It's not football specific, it's sport more generally. It includes the IOC, it includes Man United, Manchester City, a number of other sporting federations and NGOs who are involved in grassroots sport in a variety of different ways. And that group has come together to form a set of standards around safeguarding in sport that can be rolled out through the member networks of those organisations as a guideline, set of standards that can be worked towards and achieved. And UNICEF is happy to work alongside those partners in trying to demonstrate those. We're at the stage of testing those standards just to understand how they work in practice. If you're in rural Zambia versus urban Bangladesh, for example, what are the different issues that organisations that we're working with facing? But it's absolutely a key priority for us, and we'd love to have a conversation with you about how you perhaps might get involved in that, Jane. Thanks.
Hi there. My name is Toby Hester. I've just spent the last 8 years working with Castrol and very aware of the work that you do with with FIFA, David Beckham, etc., etc. I'm here representing the European Sponsorship Association. I think listening to what you've said, and thanks for a very interesting presentation, I think one of the challenges that you and a lot of the larger charities face is this step change from philanthropy through to sponsorship, because there's a commercial payback in sponsorship that sponsors are really quite afraid of in terms of associating with a charity and being seen to take advantage of the goodwill and the welfare of that charity, the welfare that comes with that charity. And I think what the industry, your industry and the sponsorship industry needs to do is to find a way of messaging that, so that that brand friction that comes from association between 2 or 3 brands, which is effectively what you have, the brand of UNICEF, the brand of football, and the brand of the sponsor, can actually legitimize I call it commercial, because at the end of the day, anybody that sponsors something wants a financial return at the end of the rainbow. Legitimizing that is the huge challenge. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing from you, there was kind of a plea in your presentation, is you need some help. And I think data might help that. So if you look at Barcelona, did putting UNICEF on the shirt help them sell more kit? Or did it just make the president feel better?
Yeah.
What did it make the fans feel better when they put the kit on? When they went and paid their 40, 50, 60 euros for a piece of kit, did it make them feel better? Was there an emotional attachment there? And I think that's the sort of thing that charities and organisations need to substantiate.
Absolutely, totally agree, and thank you. It's a great point. I mean, it's something that we're wrestling with at the moment, because a lot of the feedback and insight that we have is purely anecdotal. So anecdotally, we understand that yes, it did mean a big deal to the players. Yes, it did increase the amount that Nike were prepared to pay to sponsor Barcelona's kit because UNICEF was on the front of it. The sort of halo effect of, but these are anecdotal. We don't have a tangible figure of what that equates to, and that is our big challenge. Is kind of, we're not commercially driven. We don't come from commercial backgrounds. We're sort of, from the development sphere. That's our expertise, and we understand our brand very well. We understand the work that UNICEF does very well, And at this stage, we're learning as much as we can about the commercial, and you can tell by the number of people that are here, actually, we've got a lot of work to do to sort of make this relevant or appear more relevant to sponsors and clubs and those in the game. I think in the instances where we have had those opportunities, I mentioned the Commonwealth Games again, where actually the doors are opened really wide to us to explore opportunities in every different aspect of those games. The organisers really saw the value. They really did see the value in terms of attracting additional sponsors to their sponsor pool, because UNICEF was a charity partner, the opportunity there, in terms of engaging athletes in a different way, in terms of engaging spectators in the city. We had activation opportunities for them. So I think we've started on that journey. As you say, we haven't been able to tell the story probably of that effectively enough. And absolutely, we hold our hands up to that. That's something we need to do. I think at the moment we're just kind of scratching the surface of the opportunity and really seeing that there is great money, there is great awareness, there is great opportunity for influence through these through the clubs and the individuals, and we'd love to explore how to make more of that. So maybe that's one we can pick up with you. Thank you.
Hi. You mentioned leveraging a charity partnership, and you mentioned some of the risk. Obviously, football, there are obviously some of the main risk, and you work closely with an organisation like FIFA. What are you doing to kind of mitigate some of the risks that in working with organisations as well as with teams themselves and working in a sport like football?
Yeah, so FIFA's FIFA's a very interesting one. Actually, we don't have a very live relationship with FIFA at a UN level. We haven't worked with them for some time. I would say that. Obviously, now they're where they are. But I think we typically want to work with partners to support them wherever they are in their journey. We have a brand that we're very proud of, that we have to be extremely cautious about who we work with and how we work with them, most importantly, I think, which is why we're increasingly focused on the areas of risk. So in the case of FIFA, we have a very clear role in advocating to them and the IOC about mega events, about major sporting events. There's a particular focus that we have around the safety and the respect of children's rights as a result of major sporting events. There are a number of children that are sexually exploited around major sporting events, that are rehoused as a result of events. There's child labour issues potentially in some major sporting events. So we're at the stage of advocating to them around specific issues where we have the capacity, the expertise and the experience to be able to work with them on single issue areas. I think we literally can't take on FIFA and others across all areas, but we do what we can with the capacity that we have to try and create change at a mass level. And it's not just about UNICEF; it's about working together with a coalition of organisations that have that influence and that capacity and expertise to deliver that. So I believe TED is very much part of that discussion. The International Human Rights Bureau is very much part of those discussions as well. So working in partnerships with organisations like that, we have a powerful voice with which we are able to talk about some of those issues with FIFA and the IOC and others.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi.
I'm probably not the best person you want to connect with. I'm also from the supply side. We did some projects in the Philippines with UNICEF as well. So we know the impact that these projects have on the lives of children. What I wanted to really ask you is, in our observations, people in the developing world, in the emerging markets, know more about UNICEF than they do here. It's amazing how many taxi drivers know what UNICEF stand for in the Philippines. The question is, obviously, this is a global campaign, Team UNICEF. You have global actors, prominent sports stars. Do you feel that there's enough being done, or is there a movement towards UNICEF of decentralizing or interconnecting these on-the-ground projects? Because, as you know, I'm sure, there are tons of amazing projects in India, in Bangladesh, in the Philippines, but often the sponsors or the clubs aren't aware of those. Is there sort of a drive internally to make sure that there's better connections within UNICEF?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that UNICEF is very, very well known on the ground, and I think sometimes we struggle a little bit here, potentially in the UK, that people are not so familiar with our brand. And this is a key area that we know we need to be working harder at, because we have colleagues who are doing fantastic things, who are, driving lasting, sustainable change for children, and we have fantastic stories about these children and how their lives have been transformed. And we are not currently, getting those stories out as much as we could. So, yeah, we are working on we have a new campaign in the UK, and we are really focusing on sharing those stories more so that we have more to shout about, I guess, because the work is happening and the stories are there, but it's just about us prioritizing those and really talking about it in one voice.
Hi. I was just wondering about the partnership with the clubs. Are they the ones who approach you, or you approach them? And the other question about your partnership with Malaga. You had a shared sponsorship with Malaga. Is it still existing, and how do you evaluate the whole?
Well, so firstly, the partnership with Malaga wasn't with UNICEF, actually. It was with another UN. It was UNESCO, exactly. Yeah, it was another UN agency. That's okay. So we do have a number of shirt partnerships across Europe, as Leisha highlighted earlier on. So it's in terms of whether people approach us or we approach them, it tends to be a mix of things. As I mentioned, in the case of Manchester United, it was very much an approach from them where they highlighted a particular issue they were keen to explore and tackle with us. In other cases, more recently, we've identified a great opportunity, for example, working with the England Football Foundation. The image you can see here is with the players, so as a great vehicle for us from a communications and fundraising perspective to work alongside these guys to do what we can for children. So it's a mix of things. We, given our capacity constraints, we have to focus on where we believe there's the biggest opportunity for us from a financial perspective, communications perspective, or a programmatic outcome. And that will lead us to, naturally, the biggest clubs, the biggest teams, the biggest individuals within those. And, so far we've had some really great success opportunistically approaching a number of those and having them approach us. We're trying now through this concept of Team UNICEF and the kinds of conversations we're having here around commercializing what we do to make that a more strategic approach. And that's very much where we're headed going forward. Okay, so if there's no further questions, thank you very much, everyone, for your time and for your interest. We're around afterwards. If there are any other questions or you want to just have a quick chat or comment about anything, then please do come and have a chat. Thank you.